For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. Hi, I'm Surya Gangadharan. Is China preparing for war? That's the question we have on this discussion this evening. And our guest is Mr. Jayadeva Ranade. You've all seen him before on our channel. He's the president of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. Sir, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We had a round of 15 rounds of talks at the military commanders level. The last round was sometime in March. And it seems that we are still stuck on that patrolling point 14. China has shown no inclination to move away from from India's demand that it withdraw from there. And there's a 16th round of talks that's apparently coming up. What's your take on where this is going?
Frankly, Surya, I'm pessimistic about the talks and their outcome. I think they will just drag along. And I'll tell you why. It's the Chinese have made their position clear that they consider Ladakh as part of their national territory, sovereign territory. This was stated by Wang Yi, in fact, at the time of the clash in Galwan, and for the same day, and by the spokesman for the Western Theatre Command. So, for them to resile from that position would be quite difficult. Second, Xi Jinping's got a party congress coming up, a very crucial one for him, the 20th Party Congress. That should be end October, early November. And he would not like to do anything which would make him appear even slightly weak before that. So, any concessions at these border talks is, I think, ruled out. Third, when I look at what they're doing, their preparations, long-term preparations and medium-term preparations, they don't indicate that they're inclined to move back. In fact, if at all, I'd say that they're digging in and, facilitating movement of troops even more and better in the times to come. And their target dates for that are 2017, 2022, etc. So, that does give us, I think, cause for pause, if I may put it most mildly.
Mm-hmm. So if this is a situation when it comes to PP14, what can we expect from Depsang and, all those agreements that China has kind of torn up by doing what it did 2 years ago? What is it that we can really expect?
Well, the agreements, I think we have to accept that they're no longer valid. And I think that would be the correct standpoint that we need to proceed from. We should not delude ourselves that the Chinese will abide by any provisions. They have not till today. As far as the Depsang Plains is concerned, the Chinese are, in a fairly good position. We have a very tough climb before we reach there, and we get there. And importantly, let me point to the fact that the Chinese, being conscious of our air superiority, they are focused on building a lot of airports. So their target is 30 airports in the Tibet Autonomous Region bordering us. And 2 of them, they have already built in the Depsang Plains area. One at a place called Takskurgan, which is the last point before one crosses into the Karakoram and down. And the second at a place called Tianmu Lahu, which is in the Ili Kazakh prefecture. So they are going to, both are operational now. So they will have air cover, or shall I say aerial capacity available to them there if they so choose. So I think, these indicate that they are beefing up their position in that place.
So is it a kind of mirror deployment? They put in 50,000 or 60,000 troops. We put in the same number. Is that what is happening now?
Well, I think in response to what they've done, we have moved our troops up there, and they've moved up pretty fast. So we were able to block them at the places where they were. And that standoff continues. It is also my understanding that this kind of beefing up has happened right across the 4,057-kilometer border all the way into Arunachal. I may not be as eyeball to eyeball, but they certainly have beefed up their position as we have. But having said that, let me also say that the you know the positions that both sides have taken, I think, don't indicate that there is going to be any pulling back, and it's settling into almost, unfortunately, a new kind of status quo, unless we think out of the box, which I think our people will be doing. So that's how I see it. So it's, as I said, it's not a very optimistic picture in this sense. But we will, I'm sure, both sides are dragging on the talks with their own objectives in mind. We will trying to wear them down, and we still expect that ultimately diplomacy will win out. I think they're just playing for time to try and tire us out.
So I'd like now to come to what seems to be a leaked audio of a key Communist Party meeting in Guangdong, where they talk of mobilization and sensitizing the population for war, getting the troops ready. I mean, every now and then we do come across these things coming up, popping up on the internet. How credible is this?
This is a very detailed video, Surya. It's almost 2 hours long, and it's all in Chinese. It seems to be, it could be one of two things: either a Chinese effort at cyber, where they've leaked it, and I say that because you know that today they have announced a major exercise, one of the largest exercises against Taiwan today. A couple of days ago, they had 30 aircraft which crossed into the Taiwanese ADIZ. They also had a few others. Then, coinciding with the release or leak of this video, um, there was Biden visiting Japan and ROK. There was the PLA Navy exercise, in fact, the following day. So there have been a lot of coincidental events taking place around the time that this video was leaked. So I'm not sure whether it was a deliberate leak by the Chinese as a part of Cyber, or whether it was really a disgruntled PLA officer or a general, as this person who leaked it claims, who brought it out with an unauthorized recording. But whatever it was, or whatever the object was, reading it is quite interesting. It confirms quite a few of what we know, but it also brings to light certain other things. For example, the sequence in which the Chinese will operate, the kind of command centers that they set up everywhere, the kind of shall I say, assets that they will be deploying, drones, unmanned vessels, satellite support, things like this, and denomination. And I think quite significantly, what they call as confidential communication links between the civil and the military, which means it will make it more difficult for eavesdropping or even monitoring or doing traffic analysis in times when they're preparing for war or during the conflict.
Do you think it's possible in a society and government like this for such things to get leaked unless there was a deliberate hand behind it?
As I said, in such a society which is so controlled and so tightly monitored, even then, we have come across cases where intelligence officers have been able to turn high-ranking Communist Party cadres, Chinese Communist Party cadres, even up to the rank of vice minister and minister. So human nature, I guess, is the same. Only thing, it becomes more difficult there. But this could be the case of, to my mind, a disgruntled PLA officer. Maybe he did it and was able to escape, though the person who brought the world's attention to this video claims that 4 generals were executed because of this thing. But one doesn't know. So far, there is no way to confirm it. Unfortunately, they don't even publish obituaries, otherwise that might have been a lead.
So the audio suggests what, that the Communist Party is giving instructions to the PLA generals on how operations should be conducted.
No, not exactly. Surya, this it's quite interesting, and the point that you raised, it brings out two, three things very clearly. One, the importance of the ideology and the need to indoctrinate the troops. That comes out very clearly because that is the first item that is addressed. Secondly, that the provincial party secretary is the top dog in the entire exercise and the governor of the province. The next level are the military region commander and the political commissar. So what we see in this video is the party secretary and the governor laying the broad outline of what is to be done and about the joint civil military commands that are being set up right down to the county level. And then the PLA officers fleshing out the actual steps that they're going to take in the sense of how many ships are required, how many transport ships are required, how much recruitment has to be done. They've spoken about 140,000 people being recruited within a month. And, they're sort of saying, oh, that's very difficult. But that kind of requirement and satellite support systems. So those are spelled out by the military personnel. But this ideological content comes out quite clearly as to the importance of that. So the civil military linkage is there, quite clear. And the fact that the political party, that the Chinese Communist Party is the one which is controlling and guiding the process.
So this focus on the ideological, is it to reaffirm the position of the supremacy of the Communist Party? Is it to do what? Because this is what they've been doing for ever since the People's Republic was founded.
You're quite right. But they feel that it requires repeated doses of ideology and ideological indoctrination, not only for the PLA personnel, but also for the others. So this is done at regular intervals. But I must point out that since Xi Jinping started the reform of the PLA, which is probably the most far-reaching reform and reorganization that has been conducted, the PLA has been undergoing each year, almost year-long, ideological and indoctrination campaigns. So they've really been saturated with it. I think they feel it's important that the party's message goes down, there will be no wavering, and the party's objectives are accepted by the people as their own objectives, which is in this case, the focus being on Taiwan. So, it's like motivating the troops before beginning a battle.
Mhm. Now, you study China closely. Is there anything to suggest that perhaps there are concerns that the PLA may not be as ideologically motivated as perhaps the apparatchiks wanted to be?
There have been indications. In fact, there have been letters in the Liberation Army Daily, uh, few and far between, but that's enough to give an indication, because even if the fact that there are a few letters, it means that the problem is there and it's serious enough for it to be aired in public domain. And these show that particularly the younger elements who are getting into the armed forces, they're not that amenable to discipline. They're not that amenable to political education. And I'm quoting exactly what the letters have said. And these are the complaints voiced by the seniors who say that, the younger people are not like this. And the reason is not far to seek, because the army, as you know, the PLA, in fact, the entire Army, Navy, Air Force, they are laying emphasis on recruiting college graduates. And the college graduates, by definition, are more educated. They have their own ideas, and they don't readily accept this kind of indoctrination. So what the PLA feels is that they have been exposed to what they call the liberal ideas of their faculty, of the teachers in the university, which they are now trying to undo. So that is the situation, but there are cases like that. Apart from, of course, the disaffection among retired soldiers because they don't have pension, they don't have respect in society, they don't have re-employment opportunities. These problems are there.
You mentioned earlier that the focus of this meeting was on Taiwan. What are they? Is there a message they're trying to send here that the U.S. is preoccupied elsewhere? It's distracted. This is the time when they can strike. Is it a psychological thing against Taiwan?
I think it's psychological, yes, but I don't think it is indicative of there being, that the timing is right. I think they're still very, very carefully monitoring the US, and the US is aware of it. They've also, in Biden during his trip, in fact, what people call a gaffe by him, but it may not be, when he said that the United States is committed to ensuring that Taiwan's status remains unchanged. Now, I think the Chinese are watching the developments in Ukraine very carefully. They have been surprised by the swiftness with which the European Union coalesced around the US objectives and got together. Similarly, by the wide range of the sanctions that have been applied against Russia. And that has unnerved them because they are worried that similar thing could happen to them. So I think they're just monitoring the situation to see whether they should or should not, or whether they can or cannot have an offensive against Taiwan. But as you know, an amphibious operation in any case is very difficult. So they really have to plan for it. And this particular video, what I get out of that after watching it a couple of times is that it is actually an exercise for a war. It's a war mobilization exercise, but it's been done fairly realistically and in fair great detail. So I think they are preparing, but question of timing, I think, is yet uncertain.
Are the generals fully on board with this after having seen what's going on in Ukraine? Do you believe the PLA generals have drawn their own conclusions as to, how a possible assault on Taiwan could actually shape up?
Yeah, I'm sure they would be monitoring it, like they have studied probably there and copiously on the Gulf Wars 1 and 2 and the war in Iraq, etc. They monitor the American army and their actions very closely and learn lessons from it. And I'm sure they are monitoring what's happening in Russia. Um, the uh, they would also be apprehensive of undertaking such a major offensive unless they are absolutely ready. But then here, if there is an ideological push, I mean, if the party says you have to do it, and it's a question of being a good communist or not, many of them might decide to go with it. But I think there is another factor also is that the soldiers themselves and the officers up to a certain level would probably not be willing to risk their lives in showdown with us or with Taiwan. Many of them are from one-child families, and if they are graduates, they won't be that willing to sacrifice themselves. So I think there are a lot of factors that they will have to consider. It's okay to just have a show of force or try and push your way in, but if there is resistance from the other side, I think could be a different situation.
Is it your assessment or is it your sense that the Taiwanese won't go down that easily?
Well, I think the Taiwanese will resist. They've got a feeling of being Taiwanese rather than Chinese. There is that. But if you look at them, they'll be heavily outnumbered. They'll be outgunned unless they get backing from another major power. And I think the US has the capacity to start seeing a build-up taking place inside China, which they would be able to assess very easily, aimed at Taiwan or wherever, and they will then take steps to intervene. I think the US also, its power should not be underestimated. Um, and, bottom line is they haven't really got involved in the Ukraine war directly. So
Yeah.
they have the capacity to intervene here. And they've got their bases in Guam elsewhere and in Japan.
So, what is the lesson that we should draw from this? from this video, from the repeated violations of Taiwan's air defense zone? What are the lessons that we should draw?
I think it underscores the fact that China is pursuing and continues to pursue an aggressive policy, an aggressive foreign policy under Xi Jinping, that despite the changing global scenario, they have continued on this path. Um, the As far as we are concerned, I think obviously we don't let our guard down. But personally, I feel we need to start thinking of other methods of tackling them, including by the armed forces, because just continuing with the present situation is like almost accepting or creating a new status quo, which is not in our interest. So I'm sure that they will be thinking of something, but we need to do something to alter this and ensure it doesn't happen again. So I think that is one lesson, and the other couple of lessons, if I may just mention, is from Ukraine itself. There is single command, and none of their Ukrainian officers are either speaking out of turn or talking of
Absolutely.
peace or like that. They're talking about taking on the Russians, and I wish we had the same. We need to have the same kind of grit being shown by the retired officers and the others.
Mhm. Another point, sir, we have repeatedly misread Chinese intentions. It has happened many times in the past, including the recent past. Are we? What is the issue here? You interact with a lot of people within the military, the intelligence establishment. What is your sense of why this happens?
I think it boils down basically to the building capacity, building an adequate number of people, a cadre of officers who are dealing with China, who know Chinese, um, who are studying it for a length of time. Because unlike Pakistan, China requires long period of study. It's not something you can just pick up, and it's not from a book. You've got to really keep reading it. So I think that will be the first step. And then, of course, a lot of state-of-the-art equipment. Satellites, etc. And ultimately, the information you require and the analysts to string the dots together. So I think that's it. And I think in terms of will, I think the will is there today. It's these things have to be strung together so that we get a clearer picture of what the Chinese are doing and how we should respond. But let me here say one thing, Surya, that the Chinese seem to have an impression that they can push us around. That has changed over the last couple of years, but I think that needs to be firmly dispelled.
So, last question. We have a lot of this year left. Do you anticipate, do you expect, this is very speculative, do you expect any Chinese move in our direction, perhaps similar to what they did 2 years ago, maybe in some other kind, maybe a cyber strike or something?
Cyber strikes are happening. They're happening regularly. We know that on different targets. May not be a military target, could be a civilian target, could be even civic utilities. They're doing it there also. But if we're talking in terms of a military intrusion, etc., I would say it's quite likely. I'm speculating here, but it's quite likely. And if things start getting rough for Xi Jinping, he might do it. He might try and open up another sector where he thinks that he can get away with it. So it's quite likely. And as I pointed out, the speed with which they are putting up those airfields is quite amazing. And they've got, they've built this J-20 aircraft, the so-called stealth 4.5 generation aircraft that they have, their own. They have got 200 of them in service. I think, no matter how good or bad they are, but 200 is a sizable number.
Numbers count, yeah. And you think that if there is a big enough trigger, Xi Jinping would be willing to risk a confrontation with us again?
I think they've lost the element of surprise, Surya. So whether he's willing or not, I think they've lost the element of surprise by doing what they did in April 2020. And in that context, let me mention two things. I think their intention, they had a larger objective to teach us a lesson or, to do something else. They didn't succeed. But I think this time if they try something, I would be very, very surprised if the response from here, from India, was not very robust and very, very effective.
On that note, Jayadeva Ranade, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Great insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And for those of you who have joined us on our show, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you and good night.